Okay, we'll go to agenda item number 11A, Commission General Regulations Workshop Public Comment Allowed. Commission General Regulation 485, Tag Transfer Deference and Return Program, LCB file number R022-19. Management Analyst Kylie Taylor for possible action. The Commission will hold a workshop to consider a regulation relating to amending Chapter 502 of the Nevada Administrative Code. This regulation would provide direction for allowing the transfer, deference, or return of deference or return of tags under certain extenuating circumstances after the passage of Assembly Bill 404 of the 80th Legislative Session. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman Johnston. I'm here to talk to you guys about CGR 485, which, as you said, is the Tag, Return, Transfer, and Deference Program as authorized by AB 404 of this last legislative session. Here's a little bit about why this program was authorized by the legislature. We've had a few instances in the past where people have called us either right before their hunt starts or during their hunt, asking if there is a way they could return their tag or transfer it to someone else, like a son or a daughter. And so, like, one instance is there was a firefighter that fought in a fire at Battle Mountain who was severely burned and wasn't able to hunt for the species he drew. Another man had a heart attack on a Saturday before his season began and was unable to hunt. We had another man call. His father passed away and he had to go to New York right before his hunt started, and another individual who broke a leg. And this season we've already had someone call. A lady was in a car accident on the way to her hunt, and so now she's unable to participate in her hunt. So this is AB 404 that was passed during session. It was effective upon passage for rulemaking procedures and the regulation process, but it isn't in effect until January 1st, 2020. So if you guys choose to go forward with this regulation, it won't be in place until January 1st. And did you want me to read this bill for you, or?
No, that's okay.
Okay. Okay, so we discussed this a lot as a committee, the legislative committee of the commission, and the things that we wanted to do were not authorized by AB 404. So a lot of people expressed their want for tags to be transferred to organizations so that those organizations could give those to people who have disabilities per se, or like the Outdoorsman Wheelchair Program, and that was not authorized by this bill. And then donating maybe to your child without you qualifying for an extenuating circumstance, which was also not authorized by this bill. Tiffany, do you have anything to add to that?
Not yet.
Okay. So this is the current NAC that this regulation was kind of modeled after. However, AB 404 requires it to be within the first degree of consanguinity, and this statute allows for the third degree of consanguinity, and this provides for a refund if you return your tag, which is not what this regulation would do. You would get your bonus points back if you returned your tag to the department, but I'll go into that more. So the way I set this PowerPoint up, it goes through the regulation kind of section by section, and I can walk you guys through that as long as that's okay with you, Chairman Johnston.
That's fine.
Okay. So the first section that is added by this regulation says that an extenuating circumstance does not include an outbreak of disease or natural disaster. So if there was a fire, such as there is in Elko right now, the hunters in those units would not be able to return their tag to us. Okay, and then also this came back by from LCB with some changes that we weren't expecting, and we've already discussed those changes with them, so they're expecting to get the regulation back with some changes. And those changes, any additions are shown in green, and then if we needed something out of this regulation that was returned to us, it's crossed out in blue. So that's going to be the theme throughout the PowerPoint. This regulation would allow the transfer of the tag to another person who is otherwise eligible to hunt a big game mammal in this state. I also want to make it known that that means that if someone were to transfer their tag to their son, but their son is in a waiting period, they're not eligible to receive that tag. The other option is to defer the use of the tag for the most similar privilege in the same management unit, weapon class, and hunting season the following year, or return the tag to the department for restoration of any bonus points that he or she used to obtain the tag that is being returned.
I don't think I didn't see that in mine. Is that a new change, or wasn't in the support?
So yeah, the
Okay.
green is stuff that we're adding
Okay.
that I need to send back to LCB. And it's going to be the same in the rest of the slides. If it's in green, that's stuff that the department wants to put in that regulation that wasn't in there to begin with. And that C is later on in the regulation, but we wanted to have it on this first section, on section 3, because that is going to allow a reader who needs to return their tag or defer their tag to see all the options in front of them. It just makes more sense to have it here as well. Is there any other questions about this slide? No. Okay. Oops. So this is basically saying what it did in section 3. The department shall allow the holder of the tag to transfer, defer, or return the tag pursuant to subsection 1. And these, if any of the following extenuating circumstances occur. So these include the death of a family member of the tag holder as verified by a certificate of death. The holder or a family member of the holder incurs a disability or illness. The holder is serving in the armed forces and is transferred to a location which makes it impractical for the holder to hunt in the area which the tag was issued. The holder is a recipient of the dream tag and returns the drawn tag to the department, or any other extenuating circumstance that the commission and the department determine qualifies the holder to transfer or defer his or her tag. So if a tag is transferred to another person, the tag holder will be treated as if he or she drew the tag with respect to any bonus points and waiting periods. So regardless of whether they transfer their tag to someone else, that holder of the original holder of the tag will lose their bonus points, and they will be in a waiting period for that tag. The recipient of the tag will not lose their bonus points, and they will not be in a waiting period if they accept that tag. So this is also in the regulation, but it just says that the armed forces, a member of the armed forces, if they choose to use this program, they cannot return their tag or defer their tag pursuant to NAC 502.336, which is a different program that we have for members of the armed forces. So we also have in here that the department will provide an update to the commission on tags that we accept to be transferred, returned, or deferred, so that you guys can see every season what we're doing, what circumstances we received that year, what we did allow and didn't allow. And a family member has the meaning ascribed to it in Assembly Bill 404, which is the first degree of consanguinity, so your parent or child, but they also allowed stepchildren to be included in that. This is just some more cleanup regarding the members of the armed forces. And this is another cleanup. So this says again that if the applicant is successful in obtaining a tag but transfers the tag to another person, the applicant loses all of his or her bonus points. This is in the bonus point section of NAC. And then this is some more cleanup about like what happens when people defer their tag. So right now, if the number of tags awarded for an area is reduced, the department can refill that quota by awarding tags to the alternate list. So we could do the same thing if someone defers their tag to the next season. And then this came back to us with E added, and we want to take that out because if someone returns their tag to us according to this program, they're going to get their bonus points restored, but it was never intended to get a refund of money for this. And AB 404 actually doesn't even authorize that. AB 404 authorizes a restoration of bonus points, but doesn't address the refund of money. So what we would like to do today is have you guys tell us what extenuating circumstances include and do not include.
Mr. Chairman,
Secretary Wosley.
if I might, just a couple clarifying points. So this program doesn't change any of the existing programs. Kaylee talked about the military, the program that's already there for deference of those tags. We already have the return a tag for any reason. So even though, she mentioned fire and disease don't count, certainly anybody that has a tag for an area in which there's a disease event or fire, if they comply with the existing regulation for return a tag for any reason, it doesn't matter, they can still do that. The challenge and what we're really trying to address here, this has been a really black and white program, the way the department has administered this historically, and there has been no gray area in which individuals who may have accrued 20, 25 years worth of bonus points and have truly unfortunate circumstances. She mentioned the heart attack on a Saturday when a hunt starts on a Sunday, or a car accident on the way to the hunt. There have been some very real extenuating circumstances that have taken away a significant investment of time and money in accrual of those points. And so the department, and I think the commission in support of this regulation, was looking for some discretion in these circumstances. The challenge, the devil is in the detail of defining what those extenuating circumstances are. And that's what we're hopeful of having some discussion on today, is what you believe might be included in that definition, and then what you also feel shouldn't be included in that definition.
I have a question, and maybe I missed it, but I don't see where the extenuating circumstances when does it have to occur? Before the end of the tag? I mean,
there is no determination of that in statute, and that would be part of your determination. I mean, we had one example of an elk hunter here in White Pine County that hiking out on his hunt, the morning of his hunt before sunup, rolled his ankle, broke his leg, was unable to hunt, but it wasn't in that 2 days before the hunt started, and he pursued a number of different remedies, and there weren't any available. So, we have to draw that line somewhere. Currently, it's 2 days before the beginning of a hunt, and we have areas where that hasn't provided adequate remedy or relief for individuals, and so I guess that's the commission's prerogative. It isn't defined in statute. So if it's the commission's desire to draw that line somewhere, 1 day, 2 days, halfway before, whatever, if they can substantiate that they had a heart attack on Saturday and the hunt started on Monday and they couldn't comply with existing regulation, that's the kind of guidance that we're seeking now.
So, I feel like I'm in the landowner compensation committee again, all the what ifs. We're going to spin my wheels going on the what ifs. So, I mean, here's a scenario. Person draws a tag, 2-week season or whatever, hunts for 10 days, unsuccessful, goes home, and then after he's hunted for 10 days and has called it quits and isn't going back out in the field because that person doesn't have more time off work, wife gets sick, and I'm going to defer my tag. You know, I had extenuating circumstances that qualifies. I mean, it seems to me there's got to be something that this is like mush. And I'm not being critical of the department in drafting the regulation. I'm just saying, I just can, in my mind, I've got what if.
Well, right now, the line is drawn at within 2 days prior to a hunt. Maybe it could be as simple as prior to legal shooting time on the first day of the hunt. If you can prove that, substantiate those extenuating circumstances, that would move the line incrementally and allow some of those individuals, as long as it's brought to the department's attention prior to commencement of legal shooting hours on the first day of the hunt. That moves the line a little bit, and there's still a burden of proof for extenuating circumstance. Those individuals still need to provide a note from home.
Yeah, but that doesn't then address the poor person who rolled his ankle and broke his leg walking out the first day. He was probably, technically might have happened before shooting hours, depending on how early he set out. But things come up during hunts, and I think the legislature was trying to say, if you're 2 days into your hunt and you get a phone call and you got a family emergency and you got to get back home and we're going to let you defer the tag or give it to somebody else or return it and get your bonus points restored. I don't know how to do the time frame. I think the extenuating circumstance has to at least arise before the end of the end date of the tag. That makes sense to me. I mean, I can't have if my season ends, pick a date, November 30th. I can't say I had an extenuating circumstance on December 1st that prevented me from hunting. So I have the timing is one of the things in my mind. And then my other comment was I know what's trying to be achieved, but in subsection 2B, the holder or a family member of the holder incurs a disability or illness which prevents him or her from hunting. I know that's what it's trying to achieve, which is your spouse, child gets an illness and you can't hunt, but the way that's worded, if my child gets sick, it really doesn't prevent me physically from hunting. It's I'm making the decision I need to take care of my child. And the way that language, I mean, it probably needs to be clarified. And then I guess I have a question about subsection E. Any other extenuating circumstance that the commission and the department determine qualifies? So we're going to have a process by which someone comes in. I had an extenuating circumstance. It's not specifically set out in the reg, but here's my scenario. The department says yay or nay. Then they appeal it to this commission, and we have to say yay or nay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I don't believe that that was the intent of that statement. I think that statement means as determined in regulation. If we determine through conversation and workshopping and development of the regulation and then include that in the regulation, it would apply, because we had specific conversations with the legislature about not wanting to place an undue burden on this board with people coming before you and constantly trying to demonstrate that extenuating circumstance. And I mean, it is really black and white and super easy to administer right now. And that black and white, although it simplifies our administration of it, it also, there truly are some extenuating circumstances, and it's truly unfortunate for some individuals. This doesn't say that the commission shall adopt this regulation. It says the commission may. So it provides the commission the authority to do so if it's the desire of the commission to pursue it, but it isn't direction to do so.
Well, I mean, I keep doing the what ifs. I mean, the outbreak of disease or natural disaster, I think I know what that's intended, but what if the natural disaster is a flood of the Walker River that impacts my home, but my tag's out in Area 7? I said my extenuating circumstances, but I needed to be home to take care of my house because it's underwater. Nope, that was a natural disaster. But I know what it's trying, I think that's trying to say if there's a fire or something like that that may discourage you from going out and hunting, that doesn't qualify, but what if the outbreak of the disease is an outbreak of a human disease in which you get sick? I don't think that's supposed to be an outbreak of disease among wildlife. I think that's what it's trying to gear at, but there's a lot of issues with the language as I see it. Further comments? Commissioner Hubbs?
Oh, yeah, I'm more in line to start to go into the hypotheticals as well, and wondering how individuals can come up with an idea how to kind of use this program to, I don't really, obviously I don't draw tags, I don't even know the system very well, but could you potentially have a friend that has some type of disability that flares up and he puts his stuff in so he can transfer you, and you might have better odds at getting more tags? I'm just saying, could that happen? It sounds like it could. Like, oh, my buddy, he always gets arthritis really bad, especially right around buck season. You know what I mean? So he puts in, and then your odds increase because you know your buddy's going to transfer it to you.
This reminds me of the party tag issue we keep hearing about, but I mean, and then it's like in writing by a physician. I mean, we see. I mean, it's not that hard to get a doctor's note. There's doctors who are willing to prescribe you pain pills. I mean, I think it's a very well-intentioned statute, a very well-intentioned regulation. But as we've seen so many times, the devil's in the details of trying to accommodate the true situation. And then I just think there's situations where certain individuals, and I'm not suggesting it's the individuals in this room, draw a tag, unsuccessful, and here we come. Here's my doctor's note. Got sick, got tired, sprained my ankle during the hunt, couldn't finish out the season. I don't know. And then the deferral thing. The deferral thing is especially, then they don't have to return it and hope they draw next year, and they don't have to give us more. Deferral is, I get it next year. That's where I see the most likely manipulation of a very well-intentioned statute. Is the ability of the holder who experiences the extenuating circumstance to get the tag back the next year without going into the draw. And here's another thing that alluded to. If I'm the transferee, I don't lose my bonus points.
No, they had a different.
No, the transferee doesn't. The transferor does. The transferee does? Okay, the person who drew gives it to the A, gives to B. B hunts with that tag. Do they lose their bonus points? I mean, you want to talk about Commissioner Hubb's scenario where people start putting in and their disability flares up. Here's the tag. Person gets to hunt that species and then goes into the draw the next year with 20 bonus points that they had the year before. I think if you take a tag, you got to be willing to forfeit your points. And I'm sure people are going to say no to that. Because I just heard Mel Belding say no to that. The applicant does, but not the person who actually uses the tag.
receiver.
Not the recipient of the tag. As drafted.
So I just want to go back for the Assembly bill again. So was it NDOW that went to the legislature with this bill? Or who just, I'm trying to get a little bit of background of what's driving the impetus, because some of the regulatory structures already at play, we're just putting it in here and trying to kind of make it a broader scope, it sounds like, to have more extenuating circumstances than what we already have and involve other parties.
404 did not start out as it ended. 404 was a bill that was originally co-sponsored, I think, by Assemblyman Ellison and Assemblywoman Titus, and it was specific to a much broader authority to transfer tags to anybody in your family or anybody. I don't even know if it was limited to family. And that language was replaced with this language that was originally in another bill that was put forward specific to what Kaylee mentioned about transferring tag to an organization. And I think the primary focus there was Nevada Outdoorsmen in Wheelchairs. And so that language got massaged and manipulated in some horse trading that happens in that building on occasion. And this is what the product was. It wasn't without some perspectives that were shared by the department, but it wasn't a department bill. It wasn't, necessarily for the department. And I appreciate Chairman Johnston's comments about well-intentioned statute, well-intentioned regulation, and it is a very easy program to administer right now with absolutely no discretion. And I understand the challenges of trying to define extenuating circumstances. And, personally, I think it's just really tough for us to continually have these circumstances where they just seem so legitimate. And I understand the challenges, and it's not lost on me that it's the two attorneys on the commission that are bringing up some of these challenges, because you interpret laws all day, every day. So I appreciate your perspectives as well. I don't know if there's a place that we can land that provides the department any more discretion than we have now, which is zero, to look at some of these situations. And again, it's black and white right now. It's super easy. It's unfortunate for some individuals, but there's a lot of things that are just unfair in life, and maybe this has to be one of them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people on the track transfer bills were hoping for filet mignon, and we might got a hot dog. Is there an ability? I mean, I understand the department liking it as it exists now, which is black and white, no discretion. What if there was not a definition of extenuating circumstances, but just using that word, extenuating circumstances that prevented the holder from? And they got to make the case to the department, and you say yay or nay. I take it you're going to tell me you don't like that.
No, I think what that would do is give us discretion. I mean, we've been sued in administering it as black and white. We prevailed because it was so black and white. Anytime you create some gray area. Anytime there's any ambiguity, there's going to be more debates. It's really easy, and I think from the law enforcement standpoint, I think Tyler, and from the legal standpoint, you guys would agree that it's really nice to have it black and white, and that's why it is so easy to administer right now. If there was a gray area, I think you're all correct in assuming that some people would try to push it and try to see where that is. Our challenge would be in implementing it consistently, but I think we would welcome the opportunity to define it consistently. And these are conversations that I've had with other Western states and what authorities and discretion they have in these instances. And I had a friend whose son drew a premier area in Oregon for waterfowl hunting. He died, and his dad was able to go out there and use that hunting privilege, and it didn't even rise to the level of the director's office because of the discretion, because their authority for that discretion. And I know that part of what is a challenge in Nevada is because we have so little supply for so much demand that it makes everything more valuable. And that's really why we are even looking at this, is people have 20, 23, 25 bonus points. That's a significant investment, and we're looking for some discretion to acknowledge that, honor it, defer it, refund it. And the burden would be on us to draw that line and then to administer it consistently. And there's language in, I don't know if it's in the regulation or in the statute, that talks about reporting to the commission. There were also discussions about, could this be a nimble enough process to where the commission could actually make that ruling? And we said, no, we didn't want this to turn into, every commission meeting we have 2 hours of hunters or anglers standing before you trying to get points or tags or whatever. We wanted to be able to administer it and then to report to you each and any instance in which somebody's tag was deferred or bonus points were given, or so, and then correct it, be adaptive in that implementation. But again, I understand the challenges in defining extenuating circumstances, and I understand the challenges in having consistent implementation and people constantly pushing, trying to find where that line is. Right. So
it's even, for example, I totally understand. Death of a family member is an extenuating circumstance under this regulation. Now, if that death were to happen 2 months prior to the season, you can go return the tag. If it happens a week before the season, the thought process at that point in time is, oh, I've got this hunt coming up. I need to make sure I get my tag back to NDOW. You're not thinking about that at that time. So there's like a window of time where the death occurs during the season. Obviously, you get word and you're returning home. It's trying to figure out how all that plays into it, especially when there's the no questions asked return of tag prior to the season and restoration of bonus points. You kind of have to define the extenuating circumstances on the front and back end.
So what this would allow is, the three things: the transference, the deference, or the return. And maybe what the commission decides is that we're just talking about that 48-hour period that is between the current regulation that says the tag has to be in our possession 48 hours before the beginning of the hunt. Maybe we're just talking about that 48-hour period, and we're just talking about return of bonus points. We're not talking about deferral, and we're not talking about transference. We still have the authority to do just that piece and move that line a little bit in a way that would provide some remedy to some individuals who've come before us in the last couple of years. And so I don't think we have to do all of it. There may be a hybrid here that can still help some individuals with significant investment.
I could see one of the situations about the disability too is if you're a younger child and your family member is disabled, they're not going to be able to make it out there most likely without an adult with them, right, that knows how to hunt. Usually they're family member. So I can see that being very clear cut.
I guess I have issues, and just like Chairman Johnson said too, with the timing part. Like, say you draw a sheep tag and you got to hunt for 2 weeks, and halfway through that hunt you blow your knee out. Do you give that guy got to hunt for 2 weeks? Do you give him the opportunity to, I'm going to defer it to next year? You say, oh, you hunted 2 weeks, and you know what I mean? The timing part of that is bothers me as well.
So I think that is the prerogative of the commission. That's where the commission, could say, prior to the opening of that hunt. And then, I'm just thinking of the situations, the circumstances we've had. If somebody has open heart surgery on Saturday, it's pretty clear to substantiate that if their hunt begins on a Monday. If somebody's mother passes away on Saturday, it's pretty easy to substantiate that. I don't think there was ever the vision of the department or the legislature that there would be the opportunity to go hunt for 2 weeks and then defer that. And so that's where the details that the commission, that's where the regulation, it's the authority to do these things, but in whichever parameters you all define.
Right, but I'll give a perfect example. I had my sheep tag last year. I waited, I think, till at least a week, 8 days to go out into the field, and I planned it that way. So yeah, I had the opportunity to be out there the first week. I chose not to go that week because by the time I got out of there, a lot of people had packed up and gone home. And under that scenario, had I had a true extenuating circumstances upon my departure, people say, well, you had the opportunity to hunt for a week. Too bad. And I'd be like, yeah, but I didn't. I didn't hunt that week. I didn't even plan to hunt that week. And all of a sudden I got a family emergency that arises as I'm loading up my truck. And this is designed to try to address that situation. So I don't know if just, it's not, I think you have to think about, have they actually used the tag, and if so, for how long? And I almost feel like, first of all, the black and white scenario that we have now has not precluded litigation. You've been sued as it is. So with this, no matter how it's determined, you can anticipate possibly more. It's almost as if it seems to me you almost have to judge all these situations on a case-by-case basis. And to try to cover all the what-ifs and scenarios in a regulations.
Well, maybe we can get some insight as to what people are calling in about, too. I think the department knows best as to what's going on real time. Like, I wouldn't begin to know what would be an extenuating circumstance because I'm not receiving those calls. But I think perhaps you could let us know what are the majority calls about? What are they concerning? And we can maybe see if there's a predominant group that we're not addressing.
I'll let Jack speak to that.
Jack Robb for the record. Tony indicated earlier, Director Walsley indicated earlier, it's real easy when it's black and white. It seems real easy unless you're the one getting the phone call, and that's Maureen gets the original phone call, Julie and Maureen get the original phone call with this heart-wrenching story, and then it gets transferred to me, and I have to be the bearer of bad news. Black and white seems easy, but when you're dealing with somebody that's emotional on the phone that has 25 bonus points, it's not easy. A lot of it is not when an extenuating circumstance happened, it's when they had the ability to give the tag back If your dad has a heart attack 2 days before the season starts, you're worried about your dad, and 5 days after your hunt starts, you want to turn your tag in. Under current regulations, we can't do that. I could see those situations as being an extenuating circumstance that happened prior, and it may be 2 weeks after the hunt starts that we could say, yeah, that's a legitimate deal. So there's just all these scenarios, and I think today, our main point today is to get the thought process going. This can't be in effect for this hunting season. It can't go into effect until 2020 the way the legislation is put together. It's something that we wanted to put on your radar today. We didn't have the language back ready to go, but Kaylee and I and Tony talked about it. We wanted to start the thought process today. I don't think we're going to get any place today. I think it's just start thinking about where we can get to. Let us, you guys can call us. We can help formulate some thoughts. But I think it's not when the tag is going to get returned, it's when the extenuating circumstance occurred, which could be a driving force. And right now, that's been one of the bigger holdups. When you have a young man, you know, we talk about, Brad brought up the situation of his house getting flooded. That's a natural disaster. We had a natural disaster last year, a wildland fire that caused an injury to a person. It was a wildland fire, but it caused an injury, and then that young man wasn't able to go elk hunting. He wanted to go elk hunting because he drew a tag and he was really looking forward to it, but he wasn't healthy enough to go. But he was debating whether to turn that tag in or not and get his bonus points back. We found a workaround and worked with the property owner and worked with NGOs to get that young man a tag that was purchased, so he returned his tag. You know, there's just so much. Guy with Lou Gehrig's that spends $170,000 on a sheep tag in February, and come time to go sheep hunting, not able to go, wants to transfer it to his son. We can't accommodate that. There's just, you'd like to say it's easy, black and white, but when you're the one with the bad news, it's not easy. But I think we need to determine when that extenuating circumstance occurred is the main driver, not when they came in to get their bonus points or defer or transfer the tag. It's when that circumstance occurred. Say you take an elderly person, you know, the what-if scenarios. If I had a grandma and I kept putting her in for a sheep tag, and she drew a sheep tag, and then, well, grandma can't go. Well, was she able to go when she even applied for the sheep tag? Or, you know, those are so many things to consider. As with everything we do, a little bit of a good thing, somebody's going to figure out a way to game the system with return a tag for any reason and riding other people's bonus points that we hear about. Good ideas, somebody will find a way to work the system. We just wanted to put this out early enough to start that thought process to formulate an idea going forward. And
that's one of the biggest challenges, is that you sit here with a regulation like this and you're not you focus more on preventing the gamesmanship of a system by a few bad apples rather than advancing the regulation for the vast majority of people who aren't going to abuse it. They're going to use it exactly for the true spirit of the law and the regulation. And that's one of the things that's most frustrating about, it's not just this commission, I think it's any type of legislative body or commission like this that adopts regulation. If people wouldn't abuse things, we could just say, yeah, this regulation looks good, and we move on, and you can't do it that simply.
If I could add something, I think this is just a good opportunity to brainstorm. That's kind of what I came into today with. It sounds like the commission has a general consensus that they don't want people returning their tag or deferring their tag when they've been hunting for 2 weeks. I think that's a good start, and I think you guys can build off of that. I came into this anticipating a few workshops, and I think that's okay, and I think that if you guys settled on something and passed a regulation, that's not to say it can't come back and be amended down the road. That's just where I'm at.
Yeah, and I think some of the things we're seeing, Tier, is it's also preventing the person from returning the tag under existing reg on the no questions asked return tag restoration of bonus points. In kind of the combination, it actually prevents you from utilizing your tag for a period of time. I mean, we have cheap tags that are 30 days. I don't know if I ever go through a 30-day period with 3 little boys and work and everything else where I don't have some sort of extenuating circumstance that interferes with something you're planning to do.
Mr. Chairman, I do think it's important again to point out that it's the commission may, and we're not trying to blur that line or erase that line that we follow right now. But as I said previously, even if we just covered that 48-hour period that isn't covered by anything right now, it's still before the hunt starts, but it's after the tag can be returned now in the existing program. That shifts that line a little bit that I think could be clean, or at least cleaner than everything else. We're talking about all 3 things. If it was just the restoration of bonus points, in returning that tag prior to the beginning of a hunt, then we still have a line. We just moved it a little bit to accommodate, to provide some relief to some of those individuals, but we don't have to do everything that the statute authorizes you to do.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, I don't mean to go back and forth on this, but what if the death in the family or the parent's heart attack occurs 72 or 96 hours before the start date of the tag? You have the opportunity to return it, no questions asked, but I bet you in that period of time, you're not thinking about it. Even if you might think about it, you're not going to take the time to actually get that tag and get it back to the department. I mean, I understand moving the line. I just don't think if we're going to go from the very black and white that we have now, I don't think moving the line 48 hours adequately does what we would want to achieve.
I still don't really understand what the extenuating circumstances have been. There were a couple examples. Maybe we can get a synopsis of things that have come up to help. I don't know what they might be. It could be anything under the moon right now, and I think that's where we're stalled and not making any headway. And then obviously looking at how those types of facts and circumstances can be gamed each time.
Deputy Director Rob, do you have any other examples or things you want to share in response to Commissioner Hubb's question?
Not specifically at this time. It's just, I think the one thing we need to really focus on is the date of the extenuating circumstance, not the date the tag is returned. And I think that would really give us more leeway, and that's been the bulk of the items that I've really had to disappoint people on, is not the day that the event occurred, but the date that they tried to return the tag. If they could say, my son went into the hospital on Thursday, my hunt started on Saturday, and they could provide that documentation, we didn't get that tag for 2 weeks, I think we could work with that. And that's a lot of what we deal with, is just that timing of event and tag starting is problematic.
And Commissioner Hubbs, there's some specific examples up on the screen about the...
Okay. Also, to add to this, I do think we could potentially bring back a list of other circumstances that have occurred during hunting season now to the September meeting. Like I said, we already have had one circumstance happen, and hunting season's just opened. So I would anticipate maybe a few more but I don't know that for sure. And if there is, we can definitely bring those back to you.
I guess too, there's a number of cabs in the audience at the September meeting. Since this is not something that's been mandated for the commission to do the cabs want to see a regulation in which the extenuating circumstances can allow you to defer, transfer, or return tags? That's kind of question number one. What's the flavor of the general public on if the commission should proceed, and if so, what are their thoughts? I would certainly appreciate input from the county level and the cabs. Commissioner Almberg?
Yeah, just my personal view from here. I really like concentrating on the positive aspects of this thing. I really do like the thought that, we have some of these people that have been dedicated sportsmen for a very long time. They've built up an incredible investment, 25, 30. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And for some extenuating circumstances to come that prevents him from either using it himself or giving it to anybody, any significant other to him, is important. And yes, we have to worry about the devil in the details, but I think that we just have to, my personal opinion, I'd like to, I guess that's just the battle we try to address.
And I share that thought. I mean, if I had, and my view is, yes, I want to proceed. I want to find a situation where we can address some of these extraordinarily unfortunate circumstances that people have suffered. And and the worst thing is, when you think about the investment, the people, they draw that tag of the lifetime, and it just compounds something that's already devastating in their life. I mean, it just makes it even worse. And that's why I think Commissioner Almberg stated it very eloquently, focus on the positive aspects of this, and that's my druthers. I'd like to move down in the positive direction to figure out. Commissioner Keel?
Kaylee, did you happen to have examples of what other states were doing in this regard?
I do have that put together on a slide, but I do want to note before I go there that other states are very different than us, and that a lot of the states surrounding us have over-the-counter tags, so they don't authorize this in situations like that because anyone can just go buy a tag over the counter. Some of them do have controlled hunts in which they do allow this sort of stuff, but I just want to have that note before I go there. So I have it pulled up on the screen. Utah doesn't allow this at all. California doesn't allow this at all. Idaho, I believe a parent can donate their tag to their grandchild, or to their child, and a grandparent could do the same thing, who's eligible to hunt, and that has to be done before the opening of the hunt. Oregon, there's no circumstances in which a tag can be transferred, except for the instance that Tony gave earlier for privileged tag, or I forget what you called it, a privileged hunt. Okay. Yeah. And then Arizona does have a program, but those tags are to be delivered to or given to an organization that can be given to a child with a disability or life-threatening conditions. So. And that's not authorized by this bill, so we don't have the authority to even do that.
So we don't know of any other states that have like kind of this scenario, the extenuating circumstance scenario. I mean, these are all very, very different, even when they do allow the transfer.
Yeah, and I might seek some clarification from some other states, but I think the point that Kaylee originally made in that just how unique Nevada is with our draw system and the accrual of bonus points kind of makes it an apples to oranges comparison too.
when I look at Arizona, to me, that's very cut and dry, and I think it accomplishes somewhat what could be achieved with this regulation, does it not?
So AB 404 doesn't allow us to transfer the tag to an organization. It says that the tag can be transferred to a person otherwise eligible to hunt. If you guys wanted to make that someone that has a permanent disability or medical condition, that's up to you as a commission, but we would have to go back next legislative session to ask for the authority to transfer it to an organization such as Nevada Outdoorsmen in Wheelchairs or anything similar.
And the statute only allows the transfer under extenuating circumstances.
Correct. So the individual transferring the tag would have to meet an extenuating circumstance.
We should have asked the legislature to define extenuating circumstances for us. Your presence was not lost on my prior comment. Remind me again, we're in workshop. Do we take public comment or don't take public comment in the first workshop?
It says
Does
public
it?
comment allowed.
Okay. Oh, all right. Well, we've had quite a bit of discussion. Why don't we take it out to public comment?
You got a better touch than I do. Okay. For the record, Mike Reese from Clark County Cab. We did discuss this not at large, but we like the idea that the door had been open to transfer tags. That being said, we were happy with that. I can tell you that next legislative session, there is going to be a bill coming to do it for veterans and stuff. So it's a slippery slope, but I know there's another one coming. Doesn't mean it's going to pass, don't know. But I know that there's organizations starting up right now to try to be able to donate that to an organization that could turn around and go and give that out. Just wanted to throw that out there. So I don't think this is a one and done. I think as we move forward with this, it'll probably get refined. But the fact that we can remedy some of the situations, I know that Director Robb, he probably doesn't remember this, but there was a gentleman who received a sheep tag, and he just finished his last case of chemo before his sheep tag ended. He couldn't give it back. He could give it back, but in his lifetime, he's never going to get a tag again. So a couple of guys in Tonopah got together and helped him out. He did fill his tag, but if he knew that he was going to get a tag the next year, because he did live another year and a half, he went and climbed Mount Everest. He would have immediately turned that in beforehand. But because of the fact that you turn it in, it's gone, you're right back in the draw, you don't get another. This says you're back in it. And you can get one back the following year. So that was a big change of events. I know that would help a lot of other people knowing, hey, I could do it even if you guys left it where it was at 48 hours and long-term extenuating circumstances came up, you could give that back a lot earlier because knowing, hey, you know what, I've only got this much left of my treatments or whatever, I'll set my sights, and it gives them something to look forward to for the following year. So.
Arnie Pitts, Washoe County Cab Vice Chair, for the record. We had a discussion on this at our last cab meeting and the public input, and the board felt, I think like Chairman Johnson thought, that this was kind of mush. It was very broad and very difficult to wade through. I appreciate the department's compassion for some of these things. And in fact, I drew 2 sheep tags this year, both my first choices. And 3 weeks ago, I tore my hamstring completely off the bone. And when I got out of the MRI, they told me I was going to have surgery, a 1-year recovery. So I was going to have to give back both my sheep tags, and who knows if I'd ever draw the California again. Fortunately, I watched a show on a guy that sheep hunts on crutches, so I'm going for this. But so on one hand, I think I might qualify to, get a deferment on these. On the other hand, there's someone behind me that's been waiting, and he would draw those tags, and we have a system in place that works. So it's a hard thing, and I like the compassion, and there are cases where maybe you guys just take individual cases. I don't know how you do that, but I think the way this is written, there's just too many loopholes to get. As a doctor, I could, have a bad scouting thing. My buddy has a sniffle, write him a note, he gets to defer his tag. That's pretty chintzy. I know that's not good, but that stuff's going to really start to open up with things like this. On the other hand, if my wife drew a once-in-a-lifetime tag, this might open the opportunity to maybe take her life, so I might get that tag, possibly. I think about it at least. Thank you.
It's hard to follow that. Steve Marcus, White Pine. We did discuss this, and we were more than willing to go forward with it. We look forward to it, but we did come across the same problems and concerns that Commissioner Hubbs and Chairman Johnston did see. We did see them. We talked it out and stuff, but we would like to go forward with it, just to let you know. Thank you.
Senator Goicoechea for the record, and I've learned a long time ago not to speak for the legislature, but I truly believe in my own mind this was intended to be a true hardship, and it was not intended to be this broad-based. And if you get to the point where my truck broke down going there and I'm going to turn the tag back in, that's not what was intended. It was meant to be a true hardship case and very limited. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? I guess one of the questions that the department had or was seeking guidance, like what are extenuating circumstances? I mean, I see like death of a family member is provided, disability, illness. I would include injury, because I have a different view between disability and injury. But I think we need to know the options on the timing. I think we just need to evaluate that at another workshop on the timing of the extenuating circumstances and so forth. Some of the other extenuating circumstances, service in the armed forces, I agree with that. So, subsection D of 2, was that still in the reg? The holder is the recipient of a dream tag and returns the drawn tag to the department pursuant to NAC 502-42695?
Yeah,
I wasn't quite certain why that would be an extenuating circumstance. I mean, if I draw a tag and dream tag, that's not an extenuating circumstance. Well, I don't put in for dream tags, but anyway, for some people that'd be the jackpot,
Yeah, they would have to meet an extenuating circumstance.
Oh, okay.
That's how that should read.
But that was defined as an extenuating circumstance.
Yeah, I'll have to fix that.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out.
That's not a problem. I'd also like to know about the options. The person, if the person does have the extenuating circumstance and there's the tag transfer, can that occur at any time, like during the season? Or does it have to occur before the season starts?
As it's written, it could occur at any time, but
Okay.
that's something you guys have the authority to define also.
And I think we need to obviously discuss whether the person who receives the tag as the transferee should or should not forfeit their bonus points. Because it seems to me, the other question I have is, some hunt units, there's a fairly minimum number of tags. So if you were to defer a tag, we'd have to take that into account the following year in the quota setting. Like we recommend a quota of 5, but we had 1 tag deferred, therefore there'll be 4 eligible for the draw. I mean, you'd have to do that in some units, I think.
Chairman Johnston, also, it says the family member. That's the only other issue should it be something personal or the family member? And it says family member has a meaning under Assembly Bill 404. Do you have a slide of what family member means again?
A person who is related to the big game hunter within the first degree of consanguinity or a stepchild of the big game hunter. And like I said earlier, first degree of consanguinity would be a parent or a child, and then I could do it to my sibling.
Right. Yeah.
So not great aunt, Bertha. Okay.
So at least we don't have to define family member in the regulation. That's been done for us. I'm gonna be very positive and focus on the bright side of things. Commissioner Cavilla.
I had one more question too, that I thought and I could just be confused, but I thought that the transfer had to be to the first degree of kindred or the stepchild, but it's not. You could transfer it to anyone. Okay.
Correct.
And yeah. I'd want to make it clear that the transfer must be without compensation. Does it say that in
It does in Assembly Bill 404.
Okay.
So I think that's probably why LCB didn't add it in here, because it is in statute. But if you wanted to add it in here, we could do that as well.
Probably should.
So I guess another question is the reg going to say, how you do this? You submit something to the department? Sometimes we have regs that say on a form approved by the department, you submit it. I would think there would be some sort of process that would have to be in the reg on how you go about transferring, deferring, or returning.
Yeah, agreed. And it's not lost on me that as a chairman and someone who practices law, and Commissioner Hubbs and our DAG, whose nervousness about blurring that line at all, I get that. We don't want to blur it. We don't want to erase it. We want it as hopefully as black and white as it is now. I think the process piece, in my mind, would need to be transparent, accountable. That's the kind of piece that we would want to bring before this body. But I think before we get to that, we would certainly want to make sure we're in agreement on the logistics. And I think we've heard enough today from the cabs and from the commission to where we can go back and begin to flesh out possible scenarios and see if we can get to a point where we can keep a high degree of confidence in the black and white, or the visibility of where that line is, so that it's equally consistent, enforceable, but also provides at least some measure of relief for some people who truly have extenuating circumstances, as nebulous as that is.
we don't have to take any formal action, do we? Since it's a workshop. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'm going to close the agenda item then. And we'll move on to agenda item 12, Nevada Department of Wildlife Project Updates, Director Wasley, informational. The commissioners requested the department provide regular project updates for ongoing projects and programs as appropriate based on geography and timing of meetings. These updates are intended to provide detail in addition to the summaries provided as part of the regular department report and are intended to inform the commission and public as to the department's ongoing duties and responsibilities. Director Wasley.
Thank you, Chairman Johnston. We have 2 items today. Both of them pertain to some of our activities this afternoon. In conjunction with the field trip, we're going to take a look at Cave Lake and discuss some issues at Cave Lake, and we're also going to proceed south all the way down to Cave Valley Ranch. And along the way, we're going to look at some habitat treatment work, some of the habitat treatment work that's been funded by projects that you all have approved with the use of heritage dollars. So I'd like to have Caleb McAdoo, the Eastern Region Habitat Supervisor, kind of give you some, kind of set the stage for some of those projects. So you'll know what we're looking at in those areas, and then after Caleb's done, I'll have Deputy Director Rob kind of set the stage for Cave Lake. When they're done, of course, we have one more agenda item, the public comment period, but we do have White Pine County sportsmen that are providing lunch for us at this table here. So at adjournment, if people could grab a chair and grab a seat, we will have some lunch provided, and then we're going to rally at Ridley's with the hope of having a 1:45 departure time to go take a look at Cave Lake. So with that, Mr. McAdoo.
Thank you. For the record, Caleb McAdoo, Nevada Department of Wildlife, Eastern Region Habitat Supervisor. Do I need to push the button? Yep. There we go. Good afternoon. For the record, Caleb McAdoo, Eastern Region Habitat Supervisor out of Elko. Appreciate the opportunity to be up here and talk to you guys a bit about the exciting tour we have coming up this afternoon. As we prepare for the tour, just wanted to basically go over briefly with you about how the department chooses some of the habitat projects that we engage in, that we endeavor towards. Of course, being the Department of Wildlife, we look at things through the lens of benefiting wildlife species, you know, sage grouse, elk, mule deer. But we also take into consideration factors such as rangeland health, overall rangeland health, fuels management, soils characteristics, benefits to non-game species, and things like that. So you'll be able to see that firsthand in the projects that we get to see this afternoon. Our first stop after Cave Lake, we're going to stop at a place where we should be able to see a big perspective of some projects that we call the South Steptoe units, and which have been funded in part, as Director Wasley mentioned, through the Heritage Fund. And really the department utilizes our partnerships with our federal partners, private entities, NGOs to leverage our resources to maximize the benefit and create large-scale projects that will ultimately benefit a myriad of species. And so specific today, you know, we're going to be largely looking at pinyon juniper habitats, and so some of the resource specialists will dive into, you know, tree densities and maybe how we choose different treatment methodologies, whether it's chaining or hand thinning or mechanical mastication. So really, again, wanted to thank this commission in your role in funding these projects through the Heritage Fund, and I think you're going to be excited to see some of that work on the ground. So, thank you.
Thanks,
Jack Robb for the record. And the Department of Wildlife recognizes that Cave Lake is an important asset to White Pine County. The citizens of White Pine County, citizens of Ely, and people that come north out of Clark County to recreate. It's a gem of the county. When we checked in last night, it was listed as number 2 on things to do in White Pine County in a magazine. It was on the counter right behind Great Basin National Park. So it shows the significance of Cave Lake and that park up there in the reservoir. I'm going to go over some history of the lake and the dam, where the department's been with it, and then go over some recent developments and some future actions the department is going to be required to take going forward. The dam was originally constructed, the original dam, 1943. Some additional work was done through 58, and then in 1961 they raised the dam 20 feet. During those construction periods, there was concerns even in those days of the seepage through the dam and the stability of the dam. The dam in 1969 had a partial slope failure, so there has been prior dam failures out at that location. NDOW acquired the dam in 1971. There was recognized ongoing issues with the dam, so in 1973 they put in drains. You may be able to see some today depending on how much time we have and how much of a walk we go on today. But there's drains installed, and then a siphon was installed in 1973. A lot of work happened throughout that period. It's not all documented, but in 2001 we did some inspections of the outlet pipe, sent some cameras up the pipe, and found the pipe that should be 24 inch was crushed down to 12 inch. Sheared and exposed portions of the dam were noticed during that inspection. An emergency action plan was completed in 2011. In 2015, Kimley Horn did a structural assessment of the dam site. It included historical record review, video inspections of the outlet, incremental dam assessments, spillway integrity analysis, and geotechnical testing. Result of that again showed the collapsed outlet pipe, inadequate freeboard on the dam, which means the top of the dam isn't enough elevation above the reservoir level. If you have a significant rain on snow event above there, you're going to overtop that dam and you're going to lose that dam. So it was determined at that time that we had inadequate freeboard. The auxiliary spillway is an earthen spillway. There's loose material. If we ever had a spill event over that spillway, we would see considerable erosion through that spillway. We would sediment load the downstream sections of the existing stream, and we would continue to erode through that thing until that event stopped. So as a result of those results, there was recommendations to remediate the compromised outlet, improve the freeboard conditions, which means heighten the dam, stabilize the spillway, and stabilize the slope on the dam. Then Kimley Horn in the past couple of years worked with Black Eagle Consulting, a geotechnical engineering consulting firm. We looked at multiple ways to repair the dam and looked at different cost alternatives of that repair and the longevity of those repairs. There was 4 alternatives brought forward. We looked at alternative number 3, which is buttressing and raising the dam, enlarging and lining the spillway, arming the upstream dam face and channel, and abandoning the outlet pipe in place, putting a slurry up it, but then when you get rid of that outlet, we have to put in a new outlet. We realized the only ways to put in a new outlet, and it was in one of the alternatives, is to take the whole dam down and put a new outlet in, or find a way to bore through existing native material, not import like the dam structure is, and put in a new outlet. When we get out to the site today, we're going to park down below the dam at the first location. We'll look at the dam face and the rock structure to the east of it, or to the west of it. And the preferred alternative is to take a lot of that slough material off, drill through the face of that rock into the reservoir, and create a new outlet in that location. But that type of work, 4 years ago when we talked about it, 3 years ago when we talked about it, was approaching $4 million. The economy's changed, bid prices have gone way up. We're considering that project to be a $6 to $8 million project now. After all those fact-finding missions went on, we continued to work with the state engineer's office, state parks, and DCNR. We had too much vegetation on the dam. There was actual 20-year-old trees growing out of the top of the dam, and quite a few trees on the face of the dam. Commissioner Allenberg volunteered some time and equipment, went up there and removed everything he could, but the slope wouldn't support his machinery with the grade of the slope and the makeup of the slope, so we had prison crews. That was in 2017, and the prison crews went out in 2018 and finished clearing that slope. You'll see today that we had that slope real clear in 2017. You're going to see considerable amount of willows on that slope when we get out there today, which means there's seepage, and we're gaining that material back we got off at one point. We changed engineering firms, and Dyer Engineering, they went out and they've done some assessments September 18th through January of 19, performed dam inspections, and we sent in a bunch of information to the Department of Water Resources. As a result of that dam monitoring, we're seeing some bulging at the bottom, the actual dam face moving. We're seeing the outlet structure. We this May did another inspection of the outlet structure. There's water continuing to run out of the outlet structure. In May, the water coming out of the outlet structure was coming out at a rate of 1.7 gallons per minute. They went in the pipe after we determined what that rate was. They found, we didn't know if it was the gate on the outlet structure wasn't closing, or if there was water coming into where the pipe had been compromised. It was determined that the gate was closed. There was no water flow from the gate down to where the pipe was compromised. Where the pipe is compromised, there's a pretty good sediment load in the pipe, which means there's material actually coming out of the dam into the outlet structure, flowing out of the outlet. Another test was done in June. It showed 2.15 gallons per minute coming out of the dam. And then another test was done in July, and it showed 7.32 gallons per minute coming out of the dam. We've met with Parks, DCNR, State Water Resources, our engineers, Fisheries and Habitat Division administrators. We all met, and with our engineer that we've hired. And it's been determined our safest course of action is to lower that lake level down. Part of the problem with that dam is it was built in multiple stages, and the lower portion is less permeable to water than the upper portion, so there's water coming over the top of the old portion and saturating the newer portion of the dam. So to get it down to a safe level, our engineer and the State of Nevada Division of Water Resources is recommended strongly that we lower the dam level or the lake level down to 20 foot from the crest of the dam. It's currently down 6 feet. We have to bring it down additional. We're going to bring it down multiple ways, but we need to install a new siphon. We're going to have to put some pumps on it for a while to install the new siphon. There are things we're going to have to do. It's going to have an impact to the fishery, to the park, to the community, but we're going to try to maintain a reservoir up there, and that's why we didn't go after one of the preferred alternatives to dismantle the dam and put the dam back, because we do want to maintain that as a place you can recreate. You know, it's January, you have fire and ice out there. It's a 12-month destination at this point, ice fishing and everything else. So we want to maintain that. It's just not going to be maintained at the level we currently are. I didn't pass out the things getting passed out to you guys prior because I didn't want to preempt what I was talking about. I've got plenty of copies, I think, for the people in the audience. But it shows a footprint of high water level, current water level, and where we'll be. We go from a reservoir with a surface acres of 26.7 feet to a reservoir with surface acres of 16.6. I want to stress we're doing this as a precautionary measure. There's no imminent danger, not saying that, you know, things couldn't happen. We did some precautionary things this winter. We knew that that dam wasn't in the best shape even before we got the news we have in front of you today. But we put pumps on that dam trying to draw it down before that heavy snow load came off this year, because we didn't want to open that outlet, because we didn't know the condition of the valve, we didn't know the condition of the outlet. So we're trying to be very proactive in what we're doing. We're trying to maintain public safety. We don't want to say it's going to fail tomorrow, but it's not in the best of shape, and we need to work on that. And we're working with our engineers, state water resources, and parks. I will not be continuing on with the field trip with you guys today. Once I get to Cave Lake, I'm there for a while because I'm actually meeting with Parks and Department of Water Resources to go over some more issues at the dam and figure out how we're going to move forward and figure out the timing of that drawdown and how we're going to draw it down and how we're going to stabilize that slope and work on an action plan. It's going to be a few years to develop a construction plan, get the final engineering done to figure out everything we're going to do. When we get there, I'll go over where we're planning on drilling through the rock, but there's some additional problems that could arise with that. So we'll continue this talk when we get out to the dam, and if you have any questions, I'm available now or at the dam or later, tomorrow, whenever.
Any questions? Or we can wait till we're actually there and probably have better context with the visualization.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll move on to agenda. There's nothing other in the Department or Wildlife Project updates. Thank you, Deputy Director Rob. Thank you, Caleb. If he's still here, I don't see him. Public comment period. Persons wishing to speak are requested to complete a speaker's card and present it to the recording secretary. No action can be taken by the commission at this time. Any item requiring commission action may be scheduled on a future commission agenda. Any public comment? Rachel? If the green light's on rather than red.
Red means stop, green means go. Simple. Good afternoon. I'm standing between you guys and lunch and a tour, so I'll make this brief. I'm Rachel Bazzetti. For the record, I'm here today representing the Nevada Outfitters and Guides Association. Our president couldn't attend this weekend, so I wanted to make a couple of comments on behalf of our members. In June, the regulation NAC 502.211 was heard by the Legislative Commission, and it was the decision of the Commission to defer this regulation back to the department to work with the industry in trying to find a compromise. Our President, Henry Krinke, has reached out to Director Wasley after the meeting in June and asked if we could come to a compromise that would achieve the department's goals without negatively impacting small businesses. To date, we haven't accomplished anything. So our members have met and unanimously voted to request the Commission to follow the regulation 502.211. It requires written notification for the sportsmen in their desire for confidentiality. We don't feel like it's against the law to ask the department to follow the regulation as it reads. In fact, we think it would be absolutely legal if the regulation was printed on the application and asking them to send an email, and that would serve as that written notification to the department. The sportsmen have to take a step, and they have to request their privacy, and by allowing them to send the email, you are following the law. In January of 2018, when this commission decided to place the box on the application that allowed the sportsmen to remove their name from the saleable list, it had a devastating economic impact on the guiding industry. I am here today because I wanted to also give you a copy of the testimonials that the guides have provided to me this past year. What I've handed to you is not predictions or forecasts. It's what the outfitting businesses have experienced over the last year. I hope you'll take the time to read them. Over the course of the last year and a half of discussing our ideas and amongst our members, we have listened, and a few have said that they would prefer that their email be given out in place of their address on the saleable list. Our members feel like this could be helpful to our industry, as well as consistent with the department's mission to update the process. Our association thinks it's imperative that we don't regulate the guiding industry and limit the hunting opportunities in our state. In fact, our state promotes Nevada as a business-friendly state and actively promotes recreational tourism. Earlier in the summer, Governor Sisolak just approved and signed several landmark bills that are committed to investing and protecting our public lands and the industries that rely on them. Guides and outfitters are one of those industries. So in summary, I think if we could give the sportsmen, allow the sportsmen to request for privacy by allowing them to send an email to the department, that would be following the law. And as well as could we look at the possibilities of allowing an email to be released in the complete saleable list. I hope you will take the time to help give the department guidance in working through this issue so that we can achieve some solution and goals that is fair to all. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Bazzetti.
Mitch McVickers for the record. Everybody here is invited for lunch. The Steptoe Valley Trap and Skeet Club cooked it, so I guess whoever's planning on going on the tour might want to eat first. But there's drinks in the cooler, and thank you.
Thank you.
I will make this quick. I don't want to be between you and lunch. It doesn't look like it go very well. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here, for coming to White Pine County, key part of my district. I also want to recognize Tyler. There is rumors floating around, and I want to thank him for being so great to work with. And as well as Ms. East, we had a great session. Unfortunately, in that session, SB 275 failed to pass, and I do feel that that bill would have reached a lot of the middle ground, the issues you just heard about in the last public comment. I think we're going to have a cohesive working between the industries and NDOW, and unfortunately that bill didn't come forward. I'll just touch briefly on, you guys the shed regs, they went great. I'm sorry I didn't engage harder on that, but great job, and I know it's going to be a huge workload for you, but we have to find the middle ground there. And then when it comes to the saleable list, the existing regs do require written request that they not be there. I know you've got new regs before the Ledge Commission, and I know you're going to take it up tomorrow, and I hope not to be here tomorrow, so I want to thank you. Please consider those. But I am very concerned that, with all the bills we had this last session on what is public record, I'm not sure that saleable list will stand the scrutiny. The privilege of harvesting wildlife in this state in a lot of areas is considered. It should be public record. And I think some of the options out there that are being considered, the option of requesting that your name not be there, especially on some of the super sensitive hunts that do occur in the state. I think clearly if you were awarded one of those tags, you were concerned about, pushback on because you were going to hunt that species. Well, I think the opportunity is there today for you to request your name not come out on it. But I do think we owe the industry and the public in general the ability to know who's drawing what tags and who's hunting what species. As far as 275 is concerned, I do hope you will support that as we bring it back next session. I will bring it back. Again, I really think the industry needs the ability to help govern themselves. So thank you all, and again, thank you for being here.
Thank you for joining us. Any other public comment? Seeing none, there is going to be, as discussed, commission tour. The tour will begin at the end of the agenda. 1:45 at Ridley's Market is the goal. Should we push that to probably, I don't think there is a specific time. It just said at the end of the agenda. I'd suggest maybe 2 o'clock. That gives us 45 minutes. Is that all right? So the commission will tour Cave Valley Ranch in Cave Valley, Nevada with wildlife significance. Informational presentations may be made at several sites, but no action will be taken by the commission. The public is invited to participate, but will be required to provide their transportation. So I hope to see many, not all of you, at 2 o'clock at Ridley's Market for what I think will be a fantastic afternoon in a wonderful part of the state. So, and we reconvene then at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Thank you all.